we don't know how long our precious, wonderful life is going to be, but we can determine completely how deep it's going to be. And one of the best ways to do that is through stories and archetypes and becoming aware of this.
Welcome to the Stories Cafe podcast, the espresso version of Stories Cafe, offering quick, enriching moments of reflection on literature, cinema, archetypes, philosophy, and the art of living deliberately. Just like a perfectly crafted espresso at a Parisian cafe, each episode is a brief pause for you to submerge yourself in something invigorating and fulfilling. I'm Annette Wernblad, course creator, internationally published author, and wanderer at heart. So cozy up as we explore the powerful world of stories, how they shape our lives, and teach us the art of living deliberately.
There's actually been a lot of research that children who are exposed to a lot of stories, especially high quality stories and mythological and archetypal stories, when they are children, children who are exposed to when they're children who are exposed to a lot of those stories are better at handling challenges later in their life than children. There was a long period in the 1970s where they outlawed fairy tales. Bruno Bettelheim, who spent most of his life researching these things, says he calls it outlawed. It was a period in the 70s where you didn't want to read fairy tales to your children, and those children are ill-equipped to handle certain problems later in their life. So my point in this, and the reason why I keep coming back to really getting to know archetypes and really becoming it happens whether you're conscious of it or not. But if you are conscious of it, and if you learn how to decode the archetypes, you can use it consciously to make your life deeper. So today, of all the different kinds of archetypes, how many archetypes are there? There are like hundreds, depending on how you define it. But all the different characters you meet in all the different films and the tarot cards and all those things, they're archetypal energies, and you can define them differently. Most of you have heard me talk about this before, but it bears to have it repeated and why it is so important. We don't know how long our precious, wonderful life is going to be, but we can determine completely how deep it's going to be. And one of the best ways to do that is through stories and archetypes and becoming aware of this, because it gives you access. It helps you step by step, which I like to think that the virtual cafe helps you do. It helps you pave that pathway step by step toward the very best that you can be. And so that you become conscious, when you listen to that song by Bruce Springsteen, or you listen to a song by Leonard Cohen or Tom Waits or Bob Dylan and some of the other wonderful suggestions, or you watch something on Netflix, instead of just binging it, you stop and pay attention and feel what it does to you. And that's what we're going to be doing with the masculine archetypes. Why the masculine archetypes? Because this time of the year is the masculine half of the year. So the masculine principle is connected to everything that is going out, anything that's moving out, anything that's directed out into the outer world, and the feminine principle to the inner world, going in, going deeper. And again, does that make sense in terms of this time of year that, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, that during the summer half of the year, we're moving out more. And during the winter half of the year, we're moving in more. And, if you're spending the winter half of the year, the feminine half of the year, longing for the nice weather in spring and summer, you're wasting half of your time. You're wasting half of who you are. You're amputating half of who you are. Whereas if you live in accordance with those seasons and use the winter half of the year to move deeper and the summer half of the year to move further out, then you're on a much easier track. To me, it's a lifelong process reflecting on these things. It really, really is. Because if we're not aware of it, if we're not deliberate, my favorite word, we tend to forget it and just experience our life as this sort of, oh no, why does that happen to me? Instead of seeing it as this big interesting adventure with good and bad, and which is a lot deeper than we are led to believe by newspapers and other not necessarily very deep sources of information. So the archetypes, they represent sides of us and constantly affect our lives, whether we're conscious of them or not, which is why I love talking about them completely. So we're going to be looking at the animus, the masculine principle. When we look at Jung's primary archetypes, the animus is one of them. And the definition of the animus, the masculine principle, is that whereas men are, their primary identity is the masculine identity. And again, this is not drawn in black and white, but they have a powerful feminine side called the anima. And women, at least predominantly feminine, and they have a powerful masculine side called the animus. So the animus is the masculine principle as such, and it's not restricted to gender with all the debate going on now, which I think is refreshing, and that the animus is the masculine principle, whether in men or women. So I would like to invite you now, if you have a pen and paper, you can write it down. If you think of the animus, the masculine principle, masculinity as a concept as opposed to femininity. If you think of masculinity as a concept, what would be 3 characteristics for you, 3 important primary characteristics of masculinity and the masculine principle? And there are no right or wrong answers, but just take a minute and just feel that inside yourself. If you think of the masculine principle as opposed to the feminine principle, because if Jung is right, then we know this we have access to the difference between the 2 principles spontaneously. So for you, and then we can come back and then you can start writing what words you came up with. What would be 3 characteristics that you think of that are predominantly connected to what you associate with a masculine principle? And if nothing comes up, you can just think of the concept of father, one of the primary masculine archetypes.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed your espresso break and learned something new. If you're eager to dive deeper into the world of stories and ideas, be sure to hit the follow button in Spotify or the plus button in Apple Podcasts so that you get each new episode straight to your podcast app. You can also visit us at Stories Cafe. Just go to stories-cafe.com. There you can explore free content for a taste of what we offer, or if you're ready for more, a paid membership unlocks in-depth discussions, full access to our archives, and a vibrant community of fellow story enthusiasts. I am so thrilled to have you here, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the Stories Cafe soon.